Welcome, warriors.
Yay!
Another episode coming at you today. We had the pleasure, the honor, the privilege of chatting with an amazing guest, Romina Keper. And before Abby hops into her recap, let me let you all know a little bit about who Romy is. Romy Keper makes custom charcuterie boards, but for teachers, aka CharTEACHerie. Her boards are filled with school supplies, decorative items, and tasty treats. As an educator, she feels she has a great insight into the products best loved in a classroom or therapy room. All school staff and faculty deserve to be appreciated, and it's Romy's mission to make that happen. This past summer, she celebrated 1 year as a small business owner and has gifted boards to teachers all across the country. She's also been able to donate several raffle items and host giveaways for followers, which brings her tremendous joy. The ability to give back and support others in the process is always such a beautiful moment. Please go follow Romy at CharTEACHerie on Instagram. And you can also visit her website, charcuterie.com. All right, Abby, let's hear about this chat.
Yeah. First of all, I love the wordplay. I just love it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't love a charcuterie? I
know.
Like, I want meat and cheese right now.
I know. But a charcuterie, like,
it's so good.
Chef's kiss.
Yes, that's a perfect way to say it.
Yes.
Perfect. So good.
So Romy starts by sharing how, like, again, just like us, didn't have the language for anxiety. And in hindsight, realizes that she started to first notice anxiety around the age of 5 when she started going to school. She recalls feeling physically sick, not wanting to go to school, and this followed her into her adulthood, showing up in many different ways, such as fear of the unknown, negative self-talk, even sleep anxiety. She shares how things have changed ever since she got the language and the understanding of what her experience was, which is anxiety, and she shares a ton of helpful tips and ways of coping with the experience of anxiety. It just really stuck with me how much she really shares about, like, changing the narrative throughout and being able to view her experiences with anxiety through a different lens and sometimes even like a more playful lens. This was just such a great conversation. It's just always such a joy connecting with other warriors. And even though we all have very different experiences with anxiety, it just is like, makes us feel less alone on our journey when we get to talk with others.
Yes. Romy is a warrior badass, and we cannot wait for you, our warrior fam, to hear from her. So without further ado, here's the show. Welcome, warriors.
Yay!
We are joined today by an amazing guest. Romy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We are so glad that you're here joining our warrior fam. I don't know about you, but I won't speak for Abby, but whenever I meet a new anxiety warrior, I feel really excited.
Yes.
Just someone else to, like, commiserate with, to relate my own experience with, to learn from. And so we're so glad you're here. And let's just dive right into your journey. Tell us a little bit about how anxiety shows up for you. Or shows up, maybe not for you. I've been saying that a lot lately. Yeah. Sometimes it shows up for us.
How you said you always like meeting someone who's an anxiety warrior, because even though you're told and you hear you're not alone, sometimes you forget. And so it's always nice to hear it. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
For me, I would say anxiety showed up early. And at the time, you don't know. For me, I didn't know. I would say probably started when I was 5 in kindergarten. I can distinctly remember probably every day for the first month of school, getting physically sick and not wanting to leave my mom. And I know that's common with a lot of kids transitioning after being home all day with mom for years, but it was really prevalent. And every day she was like, all right, here's some tissues. Have a good day. You're fine. And eventually I was, but the not knowing, the fear of the future, what's going on, feeling weird, what's wrong with me, and that doubt and self-talk. So probably from then.
Wow. Everything you're saying is so relatable. I'm like taking notes, like the not knowing, the feeling weird, like the what's wrong with me. It's like that was like a narrative for like so much of my life until I started to understand like anxiety and ADHD. So I I feel you so much in that.
Mhm.
So I have like a few questions, but the first one is, so it sounds like, and I totally agree, like so many kids go through separation anxiety. Like every anxiety has its own special flavor name, right? Separation anxiety, social anxiety. Um, do you notice any of that kind of anxiety now? Like not social anxiety, but like the separation of like people you care about.
Uh, Not so much the separation, and it's more for the fear of the unknown. That's like a big one
Mhm.
for me. The
Okay.
fear of the unknown, well, what happens if this? Because in the past, this has happened, and I'm going to feel X, or so and so said this to me. What's going to happen again? Um, and guilt and the negative self-talk and not giving myself the grace, I would say is what I'm dealing with now. But it's so much different now in a good way, thankfully. In the late 80s,
We're 80s babies too. You're safe here.
there wasn't
Yeah.
any podcasts, or there weren't the way it's discussed now in school, which is wonderful. You did the best you could at the time, but it's definitely different in a great way.
Yeah. So when did you realize, like Margot and I always share like our origin story of, because we didn't have the word anxiety, right? We just knew like, oh, I felt awful, or I was sweaty, or I was biting my nail, like all those things. So like,
Nervous.
yeah, yeah. Right. It's like, no, this is different than nerves, right? Like, so when did you realize like, oh, what I'm experiencing is anxiety?
I would say I talking about it and really establishing what it is in comparison to what it isn't. Probably my mid-30s.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So now,
So,
for the last
so
2-3 years,
Yeah.
definitely.
right. It's so common. I feel like so many people we talk to share the same thing. Like for me, it was, my late teens. For Abby, it was around the same time, right, Abby, like around college,
Early
um,
20s.
early 20s, right? And which at the time I was like, wow, it took me so many years to get here, right? And I'm just trying to imagine that if I'd learned only in my last decade of my life, like how different my life would have been too. So,
I say that to myself a lot. I knew
yeah,
I was anxious then too, no, looking back, reflecting, but I didn't
right.
know how to express it and how to be aware of it as I am now.
So I have a question for you. You mentioned like half jokingly a moment ago, where it's like your mom said, "Oh, here's some tissues and you're fine," right? And since you only kind of just figured out that your experience was anxiety in the last few years, um, what did other people in your life, maybe your family of origin, or maybe just people in general that are part of your life, how did they respond to your, well, I won't say anxiety because you didn't know it was that until recently or more recently. So like what was their typical response? Like, how did you feel like you were supported? Or did you really feel like you were just like alone, like trying to navigate everything that was scary by yourself?
I would say I was supported, definitely loved and taken care of. However, there was a lot going on with other family members and health wise and things. So I think obviously you do the best you can in the situation at the time with what you know. And I'm very grateful for my parents. But it may be, and we've talked about it openly with each other at the time. It would have been nice if maybe someone said, I'm noticing Romina is a little extra upset around this time of the year, or I'm noticing she's really quiet when this happens. Maybe let's check in with her, or maybe she could talk to someone at school. I mean, coulda, shoulda, woulda. You don't know what you know, I guess.
Yeah.
But the emotional checking in, as opposed to just oh, here's a gift, or we're gonna do this. She's sad, buy something or eat. That's a big thing in our culture, Italian culture. You're sad, eat something. Oh, you're just hungry. Oh, you're nervous. Well, it's because you didn't eat enough, or something like that. But yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
And I feel that way too. It's like, oh, what if they had acknowledged it earlier or said she should talk to someone? But what I remember in elementary school, middle school, high school was like, I feel like even the therapist didn't know, right? Like I remember my friends having a variety of different challenges, like home challenges or anxiety or whatever. And like the narrative around that time in the 80s and 90s was like, kids are resilient, right? Like they're
They'll be
fine.
fine. They'll be fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I was your age,
Shake it
I was
off.
doing this. Yeah.
Yes.
Shake it off.
Honestly, and I'll honestly say this without shame, I probably didn't even know there were therapists in schools or what therapy was way later on until, you know, teens and adulthood.
Yeah.
I am a speech pathologist myself, and I could tell you a lot of the students don't know who I am. They just see me. I had no idea before I went into my career that there was a therapist, a social worker, a counselor in the school servicing these children and for what they were working on. I knew a guidance counselor in high school, but that was like the extent of the therapeutic part of it.
Right. Right. I'm so with you on that. I only actually knew like our high school had a therapist when they were suggesting one of my friends see the therapist in the high school. And I was like, oh, we have a therapist, right? And then her dad was so anti it. I was like, oh, this must be bad, right? Like there must be
what's wrong
something
with you. What happened?
Yes.
Right. Or like, there's nothing wrong, right? It's like everyone associated the idea of sitting down and talking to an objective person with, you know, a degree and years of expertise and experience, that it was like, oh no, don't be crazy. And if you talk to a person about what's going on with your mental health, or what the hell was mental health then too, right? Like a phrase never used in our childhoods, never. Nope, you're not going to be my crazy daughter. You're not going to be my crazy
Not
like,
in my house.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, and that wasn't even the narrative that my parents had verbalized to me, but like I can imagine that a lot of our peers grew up around that time. That was the narrative for our parents, you know, like
it is what it is.
they didn't get
The best you
therapy.
can.
it is what it is. I feel like I'm talking to my aunt or my grandma, right? It is what it is. Like,
it is what it is. We do the best we can, and that's it.
yeah,
It's about surviving.
And that's okay. But now we know better, so we can do better, hopefully.
yes,
Exactly. It's so good. I never really thought about how little I knew about the support services in school until you just said it, Romina, because I mean, it makes perfect sense that I was like, oh yeah, I never once thought about those people. It's like I had my guidance counselor in high school that like helped me pick my classes for college. Like it was like, what classes do you want to take next year? That was all the guidance that apparently we were given. Unless we really showed up with like certain behaviors or things that get ostracized about different kids. So I want to talk a little bit about behaviors for a second. Talk to us more about the ways that you notice anxiety manifesting in you in terms of your body, your mind, and your behavior patterns, whether it be from childhood anxiety or how it affects you now. Like, what are some of the physical symptoms that show up?
For me, when I'm really anxious, it's like someone stepping on my chest, like a real tightness, like, oh, I might die today. That's like the more severe end of it. And then most of the time it's stomach issues, prevalent for the most part. I would definitely say the sleeping issues, the restless thoughts, the, oh my gosh, this is going to happen if I don't do this, and not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep, and then being anxious. Oh my God, I only slept this amount of hours. How am I going to function? Or I have this to do tomorrow and I didn't get to sleep. And then that makes me physically sick. So that's what I would say are the behaviors now.
yeah. So I have a question, because Margot and I have done an episode on sleep anxiety. No, we've
two
done
episodes.
like 2 on sleep anxiety, and we can very much relate to that. Hard time falling asleep, staying asleep, watching, like having insomnia and watching the time like go by and then being like, oh my God, my day is going to be so awful, like, and all that. So my question is, how does lack of sleep then impact you? Like when you are having sleep challenges the night before, how is it the next day for you?
It depends on the day. Some days I can handle it better. Some days are really rough. I'll be sick, or I'll have to take a sick day. I try not to, obviously, because you can't, and you have to do work and you have to function. But I think reiterating to myself just because it happened last night doesn't mean it's going to happen again today. Changing the narrative and taking the shame and the guilt off of it.
Yes.
And knowing that you're strong, you'll get through it. It happened before, it'll happen again, and you'll get through it. And a weighted blanket.
That. Yeah. Yes.
When you get
back home.
Life changing.
Yes. I love that you went into like, hey, I can change my way of thinking in that moment. But also, here's something that like exists in the world that has been a game changer for you, right? Like, I feel like a lot of times, I'll speak for me. I feel like, all right, I should be able to navigate this with my mind, right? Like, control everything with my thoughts. Just control the thought patterns, and everything's better. And there's so much merit to that, and I'm a big proponent of that as a mindfulness educator and someone that practices. Right, it is a big part of. But sometimes you just need an aid of some kind that doesn't come from your internal resources. And I'm not weak for wanting them or trying them out, right? It's just there to help me get a better night's sleep. So I just love and appreciate you for acknowledging that sometimes, yeah, okay, it's changing the narrative, but also there's this awesome tool like a weighted blanket that's going to help me feel safe and secure and more cozy and be able to sleep longer.
Yeah. And first, you're welcome. And thank you for saying that. Also, I think just saying it out loud, hey, I'm anxious right now. Hey, I had a rough night sleeping. Talking about it, just saying it as is with no negative, no positive, just as is. And therapy and medication. And if you need the medication, there's no shame in that. And that took me a while to accept as well. Sometimes you can talk yourself out of it. Sometimes it's a chemical imbalance. And someone said to me that I say to myself as a reminder, and I can share this with everyone, the brain is an organ just like anything else. If someone who has an insulin deficiency is diabetic, they're going to need to take insulin to help that organ produce the correct amount of sugar in their body. And sometimes if you have less dopamine in your body, you might need some medication to help your brain because it's an organ as well.
Woo! All this.
We didn't talk about this.
Shine. We forgot to talk about sparkle and shine. This just means like, woo, we feel you. Our heart sees your heart.
Yeah.
I mean, brava.
Yeah. And I totally
shout out to my school psychologist friend Anne for sharing that with me.
Thanks, Anne.
Good job, Anne.
Yes.
It's so true. And like, as you're saying that, right? Like, we are definitely like, hey, you meet your needs with what's going to work for you. Right. And I've had my own time with meds and not with meds. And I noticed differences both for better and for worse in both on and off. But as you were saying that piece, it's like, who even started the stigma? Like, why? Like, we're not talking about like pain pills, which again, those people with chronic pain, fine, right? But that's off topic, right? But like, who started the stigma about like, if you have a deficiency in your brain, like, don't get help for it, right? Like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever. Like, it's just so weird whoever started that. And I'm with you. Like, it's an organ. Deal with it the way you would deal with any other organ, because
you're never going to feel shame for taking your insulin.
Right.
You're never going to feel shame for going to chemo. It's something that you need.
Yes, exactly.
I think having that conversation more often is going to be helpful for people as well.
Yeah. Just going back to the beginning of our conversation, which is just like, we all needed more reminders and consistently need more reminders that we're not alone in our experience, period. Right. Whether it be with just having anxiety. I love the way you said, sometimes just stating my experience plainly is like step one to healing from it, right? Or just being able to deal with it or get through it.
Get through it.
Exactly. Love. Okay. So talk to us more about coping strategies. So far, obviously you just gave that perfectly said, impassioned, like couple of moments talking about the value of medication for you. You mentioned therapy. So like, what are some of the other kinds of things that are your go-tos in terms of coping with your anxiety when it comes up?
I would also say sharing it with the people around you, sharing it with your husband, your mom, friends, whoever you're with that you trust, that you could just say, I'm feeling really anxious right now. Give me a minute. or, oh God, today was really rough, or I had a rough night, and talking about it with them and hoping they give you the grace and understand what's going on with you. I think that's been helping me too. And another tool I feel that I've found helpful is just listing, whether verbally or writing it down, just specific items I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that I'm here in my beautiful, calm apartment. I'm grateful that I got home safely today because the traffic was insane. I'm grateful that I get to have turkey burgers tonight. It's just the listing of the gratitude. I'm thankful for Downton Abbey being on Amazon Prime so I can rewatch it. Specific items like that. The
That's so
listing.
exciting. I have to talk to you about that after we're done recording. I'm so excited about that.
Good.
So good.
So I love these because they sound like they anchor you into the present, right? So you said like you share, you talk about it, right? And so yeah, you're telling other people how you're feeling in this moment, but you're also telling yourself, right? You're like, I have anxiety right now. I'm experiencing anxiety. Maybe I need a break right now, or I need my blanket, or I need whatever. But that experience is in the present, right? And at the very beginning, you were talking about how a lot of the anxiety shows up as like, worried thoughts about the future or like the unknown or whatever that is. And so the stating what is in the moment sounds very like embodied, like here's what's happening right now. And then also like the gratitude list, right? Like that brings you here into the moment. Even if it's like I'm having turkey burgers later, it's like it's still that anchoring thing that brings you now, like, oh, I feel grateful or I feel excited for that experience. And so I love both of those because it sounds just really powerful in the anchoring you to the present when our minds want to get like super swirly whirly and think about everything else.
Yeah. It's a job. It's kind of like a job in and of itself. And sometimes you do better, you have a good day, and sometimes you don't. And I guess accepting that that's okay is part of it. Don't ask me how I'm going to feel at 10:30 at night when I'm trying to fall asleep later. But
Right.
for right now, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And another tool I forgot to mention that is a big one. You've probably heard it. Game-changing book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And that practice and almost like relearning the alphabet. It's like relearning a new way to talk to yourself. And I talk for a living. So what are you gonna do?
I
Part of
love
my
that.
day.
Relearning a new way to talk to yourself. I mean, I also want to just acknowledge too the sort of the yin and yang of what you shared too. It's sort of like describing how you're feeling in the moment, right? And sometimes it isn't a good thing. You may not necessarily turn to your spouse or your mom or whoever and say, I'm feeling really excited right now, or I'm feeling really happy. Maybe you do, and that's great. But like, describing your experience when it's a not very comfortable experience is, I think, sometimes a bigger practice for us. So I just love this sort of, the yin and yang with that versus also listing the things that you're grateful for. Because while, yes, both of them are super anchoring to your experience right now, you did mention something that didn't happen yet, right? It's like you can have that preemptive gratitude for something that you're about to experience, like eating dinner when we're done podcasting. And I also think it's just a great way for you to, or for when I say you, I mean for all of us, really, to be reflective on, even though we're anxious or we're anxious people, we're anxiety warriors, we still have so many wonderful things in our lives to be grateful for. And remembering those amazing things and those little things are sometimes what gets us through those really tough moments or those really tough days. It's like, oh yeah, but I also have this, and this.
Yeah.
And
The
it's
little
like,
things are the big things.
yeah. And it's like, it's not placative to say, I'm going to pause here and list 3 things I'm grateful for if it works for you, right? Like at the same time, it's like you don't want to maybe hear from your mom or anyone like, oh, just be grateful for all the things you have, because that's kind of like, hey, I'm having a tough moment. Don't tell me to be grateful. I know when I'm supposed to be grateful, but I might be projecting a little bit. Sorry. But I feel like, it's just a great reminder that like the things that we do for ourselves can have a little bit of a yin and yang energy. It's like we can remember that we're lucky and that we've got lots of things that we can be grateful for, while also knowing, that anxiety is normal and it's a feeling just like any other, and we'll get through it.
Absolutely. Nothing.
Yeah.
that you feel in one moment doesn't mean that you're ungrateful or minimizes the rest.
Mhm.
So the not minimizing one feeling with something irrelevant is a part of the practice as well.
Love that. I mean, that's so powerful, right? Even though we're having like the anxiety, it's not giving that all of the attention and minimizing all of the other experiences that we have or the other emotions that we have in the moment or throughout the day. I love that.
Mhm. All right, how would you describe your relationship to anxiety these days? Like if you could put a word or a phrase on it. We've had a few people like offer up a Facebook status with their relationship to their anxiety. Like what comes up for you when you think about it?
Relationship status. It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated. I would want to put divorced, but it's complicated. Never ending.
Yeah.
I would say I'm aware of it. It still scares the shit out of me, makes me sick,
Yeah.
but I'm aware of it. I like to think of it as like a really annoying neighbor or tenant who's never going to move out. And you just kind of have to be like, all right, Mr. Smith is really being a jerk today. Mr. Smith is quiet and do the best you can with him.
Yeah. You
Love
got
that
to
it's named
tolerate
Mr.
him,
Smith.
knowing the interactions will change, but I love that.
He's
I
there.
love
He's not going anywhere.
Right. Right.
Now I'm just thinking about what Mr. Smith might look like.
I feel like he's in
uh,
the basement apartment, right? Like I feel like he's in the basement apartment for some
No,
reason.
he's the one walking above you while you're trying to sleep.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
stomping on the ceiling.
Okay.
Or,
All right.
or playing, heavy metal at 9 a.m.
Wow. Okay. See, in my mind, Mr. Smith went straight to like an older guy, but heavy metal could be a varying age. Who knows? But I
Yeah,
love
variety of
that.
agents.
That's good.
9
I
a.m.
like
I would
it.
take, and 5:30 a.m. when I'm trying to just slowly get up calmly.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need him screaming along to his heavy metal.
So good. I just love the idea too. It's just like I think it's fun to put like a face or a set of imagery to some of the less fun experiences that we have, like anxiety. To just sort of, remember that like we can have humor
Yeah,
and
okay.
that could be helpful too.
And no hate against heavy metal. That was just the first thing that popped into my head. It could
It's
be
loud.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
loud is
Well,
powerful, but a lot of people find it coping with it to help cope with their anxiety. So to each their own.
yeah.
To each their own.
Just
Exactly.
maybe don't blare it at 5:30 in the morning when you have neighbors that live below you.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
a good rule of thumb.
Start
for
with some Taylor
everyone.
Swift first.
Mm-mm.
I'm totally kidding.
No?
That's not better. Not in my mind anyway.
Oh no.
I
Okay.
mean, I would take
modesty.
Taylor over heavy metal.
Yes. Oh,
Oh,
100%.
it depends who you ask.
100. Okay. If you could step back in time and speak to a younger version of yourself, what kind of advice would you offer?
There's so much, but I know we only have a little bit of time. I would definitely say, now knowing the language better, to know that setting up a boundary is okay,
Mm.
and that doesn't make you selfish or weird, and comparing less, because the comparing, oh, she has this, she has that, I don't have this yet, I don't have that, what's wrong with me, the less comparing and the trusting myself more. Like there's something wrong with this situation, or he's not right, stop trying to make it work just because you want a boyfriend or just because you want this job. If it doesn't feel right and your gut is telling you, then trusting it, for sure. I think I would definitely say that to myself, and a few other things too.
Yeah.
So powerful, right? And so hard, right? Like to
Very
trust
hard.
yourself and then be like, wait, is this real? Is this anxiety? Should I say, should I go? Should I, like whatever
The
that.
overthinking.
Yes, the overthinking it is, but it's like you're right. Like we all have that inner knowing, that inner ability to like trust ourselves that we are actually seeing the experience clearly, right? And that if we just listen to that inner voice, but but that's scary too. Anyway, I love it. It's so
Yeah, is it your
powerful.
voice or is it your anxiety
Yeah,
talking?
right.
Yes. Yes. Right. It's like, it's such a practice for us warriors to know the difference. It takes so much effort to know the difference, so much practice and self-questioning and journaling or meditating or all the things to be like, what is this moment right now? Is this my truth? Is this how I really feel? Or is this just like your anxiety saying, you should be afraid of this because of all these other reasons? I mean, I'm glad, Abby, that you mentioned that you like hammered home that it's hard. Like it sounds easy in practice. Oh, just trust yourself, trust your gut, trust your intuition. It's like these things go great on postcards and, inspirational posters, but like putting them into real life is not just like super duper easy for all of us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I feel like that is just so relatable. Like for all of us, like our
Yes.
younger warriors needed to hear that, like repeatedly, and then how to do it.
And then how to do it. That's the key. That's the key. Okay. If you could define the phrase anxiety warrior, how would you define it? What does being an anxiety warrior mean to you?
Well, since your podcast is called Anxiety Warriors, I would definitely say a badass because
All right.
a warrior is a badass who is brave, goes into battle every day, knowing that it might be a really easy day or it might be the worst day ever, but they face it anyway because they have to.
It's kind of like that job that you referenced, like anxiety is its own job, right? And I love it. Like you have to show up, you have to go to work, right? It's like, how do you do it? And like as a badass, like
because you will, because you've done it before and you'll do it again.
Yeah.
That's definitely
Kicking
the
and screaming and maybe crying, but you can.
Yeah. You can
You've done
handle
it before, you can do it again. Yeah, it's just such a great reminder of everything you're saying. Just reminds me of just strength, right? It's just like being and feeling strong, even when we're not feeling strong. Just having that inner belief that like you're strong because you've shown up every day. You've strong because you continue to do the thing and all the hard things, right? And so like on the days when we're feeling not at our strongest, remembering that all the hard stuff we've come through, right, is I mean, just such a powerful reminder. So thank you.
And saying it to yourself, yeah, today's pretty rough and it's okay. You feel like crap and it's okay.
Yeah. Today's rough and it's okay. And it will be okay still.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love that added part. And it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing your story and so much of your experience with us. But now it's time to be silly for a few minutes, to play a little bit. Anxiety can sometimes be big and heavy, but we also are strong and fun. And we can play at the end of our episodes. We love to play with our guests. So are you ready for a little lightning round?
Let's do it.
Okay, here comes the official sting. Romy, are you ready for round? Lightning. Okay. So every time I say lightning, Abby dies.
Added on like after a year, and I'd
need a sound effect. You need a boom.
Ooh, we really
need a boom.
Every time we joke around about like creating an official sting, we just come up shy of actually doing it.
Yeah.
That's our like what do you call it? Our procrastination station. Those are the things that we like. We're like, oh yeah, we'll do it next time, and then we just never do. We kind of enjoy being in the moment with our stings.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
And it's okay. Yes.
Okay.
They're organic stings.
They're organic stings. I do like the idea of having like a boom at the end, though. Maybe we got to work on that.
Like
boom. All right. So we're just going to go back and forth and ask you a handful of fun, get to know you type of questions. You do not need to answer at lightning speed. You can take a pause, take a breath, answer in your own time. All right. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay. So I saw that you like the Golden Girls. Okay. So I grew up watching them, but I don't remember them that well right now. So if you could have one trait from each Golden Girl, What trait would you want from each one?
If I
Excellent
could
question.
or if I do.
Oh,
Oh.
you
let's
interpret
see.
it how you want.
Oof, good question. I I would say Blanche's comfort with herself,
Mm-hmm.
because she's very sensual and proud. Um, Dorothy's smart and common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Rose's sweetness, sometimes to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely Sophia's mouth, because
Oh.
she is Italian like me after all. And she's a good cook. So that's why I try to emulate.
I love it.
Okay. This isn't my question, but now just for fun, what kind of quality from Stan would you take?
Oh my God. Let's see. Stan, I would say, even though he was such a yutz, is that what they call him?
Yeah.
I would say he doesn't give up. Still shows
That's
up.
good.
I'll give him, that's a positive. I give him the credit for not taking the hints. He still keeps coming back.
Yes. He
Dedicated.
doesn't give up. I
Aw.
love that. I'm also
Yeah.
a big Golden Girls fan, so we'll have to have a separate conversation about that show. The best. Great question, Abby. Love that. Okay. If you were an item of clothing, what would you be and why?
Socks,
Okay.
because they come in all cute colors. You don't have to worry about your weight with socks. And my feet are always cold. So
Boom.
Perfect.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
That was a fast one too. I feel like I would have
Yeah.
overthanked that for thank.
some things
Overthanked that.
Okay, so I also saw that you speak 3 languages. So my first question is super easy. What are the 3 languages that you speak?
English, Italian, and Spanish.
Okay. Now, if you could magically like go to sleep tonight, wake up tomorrow, and have a 4th language that you could speak fluently, what would it be?
It's a good question. Probably I would say Chinese, just because China is such a big importer and exporter, and we have so many people from China in New York. I would want to be able to communicate with this huge part of the population.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mandarin.
I would love to. Mandarin. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good skill. It's a good skill. It's amazing that you have even 3 languages. That is awesome. Okay. What was your first car? And did your car have a name or anything?
My first car was a blue 1997 Volvo, a 960. And I know the model because my dad loved Volvos, and we had about like 6 altogether. And it was so cool. It had a 9X. That's a New York, I think it's 9X or Bell Atlantic car phone in the car.
No way.
And my dad was so awesome. He paid for it to work every month, just for him to call me and be like, "Where are you? Are you coming home? Call me. Where are you?" So I thought it was so cool. I had a car phone. And I got that when I was 16. So that was my first car.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
It didn't have a name.
That's okay. Does your current car have a name? Does anything have a name that's weird that maybe wouldn't have a name? Other than Mr. Smith. Yeah, we know.
My first car that I bought for myself was a Toyota Camry, and his name was Mr. Feeney.
Oh, yay.
From like Boy Meets World, Mr. Feeney?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, what other Mr. Feeney could there be?
I'm just making sure. You never know. Maybe she had an English teacher named Mr. Feeney too, like
Fair.
I drove it to college, and I'm smart now, Mr. Feeney. So
yes, I love that. He was like the best character in that show. Also, my first car that I bought myself was a Toyota Camry as well.
It was a boat. It was so big.
Oh, what was that?
It was a boat. It was huge.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. I felt like mine was average size. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead, Ab. Last question for you.
Final question. So, before we started recording, I was saying how I very much love and appreciate speech therapists. I learned a lot from them in regards to like how to like work with children and teach children. And I even like would do like hand symbols to teach kids how to sound stuff out to like help them read after like I worked in that school. I felt very empowered with the knowledge from speech therapists. So my question is, what is something you wish more people knew about speech therapists?
That we just don't play games.
That's so valuable.
Is a specific goal that we're targeting, and the game is supplemental. The game is a motivating strategy. It's a byproduct of the goal that we're targeting. Or sometimes the game itself has goals that we're working on, because a lot of the kids, they're like, oh, she's the teacher I get to play games with. And that's fine if that's what they think. But when we're working with them, today we're going to work on synonyms, or last week, remember when we were working on with conjunction words and making your sentences longer, and we were playing with the train set and we added an extra train, stuff like that. There is a purpose and a reason to the games that you see us playing.
Yes.
Very valuable.
Yeah. Play is how children learn.
Absolutely. Amen. Say it louder.
Yeah.
Play is how children learn. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I want all the warriors, whether you're parents or teachers or whoever, just remember that. What teachers do, what speech therapists do, what everyone is doing in the lives of children has a value. We're not just there to play and be silly and have fun, but playing and silliness and fun are helpful in children's development.
And with the older kids too. Like the older kids should be allowed to play. Like 5th graders, 6th graders, they're still children. They're 10 and 11. They should still be able to play, and it's okay.
Yeah. Ooh, so good. So good. Okay. I wish that were the last question. Oh, okay. Final question.
Go on and on about that, but I
know. It'll be a soapbox moment for all of us. Do you have a favorite midnight snack? Or you could choose between that or just a favorite comfort food. What kind of food do you think of when you're like just looking for something that's comforting?
Probably not a snack, but anything with cheese.
Okay. What kind of cheese?
Cheesecake, cheddar.
Cheddar.
Cheese popcorn. Anything with cheese. I don't know.
Sounds good. Before you said popcorn, you said the P-O sound, and I thought you were going to say popsicle. And I was like, wait, what? Tell me more about that.
No, I'm more of a salty. I don't know.
Yeah, gotcha. Makes sense. All right. Well, that was sort of a lame question to end on. But that's what I had written down, and I stuck to it. Oh my gosh, Romy, thank you so much for getting down in the mud and playing with us here at the end of the episode. And obviously for sharing your anxiety warrior journey with us. We really, really appreciate you.
Likewise. Thank you again. My pleasure.
Yeah. Before we have you share with our listeners how they can find you and connect with you on social media or wherever, we like to ask all of our guests to share a win of the week, something big or small that felt like a win. Doesn't have to have happened this week. It could just be something recently. What's your win?
I would definitely say getting 2 big orders in that were stressing me out. They were on a to-do list for a few weeks, and I kept like, yeah, I'll get to it. And I had to get them done. So I finally got them done. So 2 teachers that these gifts were for, they're getting them, and I'm very excited to gift it to them.
That is awesome. Everyone, well, Romy's about to tell you how to find her, but everyone needs to find her right away and get something fun for people in your life. Okay. Tell everyone where they can connect with you.
The best way is to follow me on Instagram at CharTEACHerie, CHAR teach ERIE. CharTEACHerie.
And it'll be in the show notes. Everyone needs to go follow Romy on Instagram. Some really cool gifts for educators and people who influence children. So
it's a perfect time to check it out now, right? It's like getting around the holiday time. Show those teachers how much you appreciate them while also supporting another teacher. Like it's a win-win for everyone.
And we know what you like. And it's never too early to put in a holiday pre-order because things do get busy and there is turnaround time. So absolutely, if you want, shoot me a message or charteacherie.com too.
Awesome. Yes. Support that female-owned small business, people. Do it. Do it now. All right, Romy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, girls. Have the best day.
Thanks.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Woo. Warriors. Obsessed with this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So
good.
fun talking to Romy.
Yes. I personally, I mean, I know you've met her before, but for me, like there always is a little bit of like jittery excitement nerves whenever we're like getting someone on that I've never interacted with before.
Yeah.
And like I trust you, right? Like you're bringing, so like there's more excitement, right? And
Yeah.
I loved this conversation. I loved connecting with her. Like I even loved at the beginning how she was like, yeah, it really is nice to like find other warriors because it can be isolate. Like everything about her, I was just like, give me more. But I live far away, so I only get these snippets of Zoom combos.
Right. No, well, it's funny that you mentioned, because it's like I only met Romy the one time.
Yeah.
And we only spoke for like 10 minutes, not even. And it was after the little networking event was over. And I don't even remember how it came up, but I feel like I feel like talking about anxiety comes up in most of my conversations in the last few years. Maybe it's because I co-host a podcast about one. Could that be it? But it's just funny because so many people, when I do mention the podcast, are like, oh, I have anxiety. And without even saying, I'd love to be a guest. And then obviously my next go-to question is, do you want to be a guest on our show? But even when that part maybe doesn't come up, a lot of people say, I have anxiety too. Right. And it's just like, yeah. So I feel like, and Romy said it several times during the conversation today, how bringing up our experience not only helps us to feel less alone and isolated, but it may actually help to serve the person we're speaking to or the people that we're speaking to feel less alone and isolated. Then maybe they feel safe to share their experience, you know?
Yeah. I mean, who knew that talking about your anxiety could actually bring about connection and community?
And
not me in the
anxiety.
20s and lower your anxiety. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm glad you said not me in my 20s, right? Because that was a big part of our conversation too, which is one of my first takeaways was how, like so many of our guests, including the two of us, we learned that we had anxiety years after we had started experiencing anxiety, right? We experienced it in childhood. It wasn't labeled for us. There was no words for it. We didn't have the types of support that are available now, or at least spoken about more now and more visible and offered a little bit more freely from a younger age, which is amazing. Yeah. But I loved learning that she only really kind of labeled her experience as anxiety in the last like 3 years, I think she said, right here in her 30s. So, and she said that she remembers in reflective mode that her anxiety began in kindergarten. And it's like, there's a huge gap there. What a divide. And I know she mentioned how she wondered too, how different her life might have been if she had been given those tools, the language, beginning from an earlier part of her life.
Totally. Having that label does so much, right? And like, I'm not going to get in the conversation about labels because we know I have mixed feelings about the labeling, right? But in regards to like anxiety, or like for me, like with ADHD, like anxiety, I got the diagnosis early. And so it's been a part of me for so long, but only recently talked about. ADHD, I got the diagnosis too, but I didn't learn until my 30s the way it shows up differently for women. And so I had a similar experience where like, oh, wow, like my whole life, all of these things that weren't anxiety, right? They were other issues like nonstop talking, like was from having ADHD. Like it just puts things in perspective and kind of like, for me, like settles the insides a little bit. It's like, oh, this makes way more sense than there's something wrong with me. Right? Like
it's also a little bit more like specific than just something's wrong with me. That could mean a lot of things to a lot of people.
Right. And then it's like, oh, this makes sense. Like my behaviors, my patterns, all of that now makes sense with a label like ADHD.
And it's something that can be and it's something that can be navigated.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my first takeaway also comes from the very beginning of the convo. And it was when she was like, hey, I appreciate connecting with other anxiety warriors. And, you know, she was like, you know, it can be isolating, or she might not have said isolate. I can't remember the word she used, but like this journey, the anxiety journey is lonely. right? And even though mental health is getting quite the spotlight in the last few years, mostly thanks to our podcast. That's a joke.
100%.
That's a
Yeah.
joke. Anyone who thought I was serious. But in the last few years, like, you know, it's getting a lot more of attention, mental health and anxiety, right? It's still so easy to feel alone in your experience. Right. And so I really just appreciated her acknowledging how nice it is to connect with others, because sometimes anxiety doesn't want us to connect with others. Sometimes anxiety is feeling socially anxious and doesn't want to connect, or sometimes anxiety is so overwhelming it's hard to connect. Right. And but when we connect with others, there's still this like this connection. Like, I get it. Like, I might not have the same experience as you, but I know how hard it is. Like, we are community. Right. And so I just appreciated her sharing that, because I just think it's really important to remind myself, to remind everyone else that like it is lonely, even with all of the attention on mental health these days. Right. And thoughts like, what's wrong with me? Or God, I should do better. Or like the shame that comes with it can still happen even when we have our labels and we have the support. And so I just really appreciated her acknowledging that like nice connection at the beginning, because I definitely think our podcast has helped me feel way less lonely in my experience, because sometimes when I'm having anxiety, I'm like, oh no, I got a whole community of people that feel this way too. And it sucks, but I'm not alone in it.
Right. Yeah. 100%. I think my final takeaway, God, there's so many things I want to say.
I know.
Trying to, you know, organize the thoughts is hard enough for my brain, but at the same time, it's like, I want to say that like 20 things are my final takeaway. But trying to narrow it down, I think the overall message that Romy kept delivering was not just what you just said. And that was a huge part of my takeaway as well, was the feeling less alone part. But it was how often she talked about changing up her perspective as far as, you know, reframing her thoughts and flipping the script and changing the narrative and reminding herself that she's a badass and that she's strong, and that if she was able to get through it before, she'll still be able to get through it now. And just the way she talked about showing up, right? So many of our warriors have talked about that too. And I meant to mention that while she was with us, you know, while we were still talking, was when she talked about like anxiety is like a job, like but you wake up and you go do the things, you live life, and you find those moments of gratitude and you write those lists of gratitude. And so I just appreciated that reminder too. It's like, life is really freaking hard. The things we are asked to cope with on a daily basis is super tricky and challenging, and we aren't alone in it. And we also have the power to flip the script and change the narrative for ourselves and say things like, I can get through this because I always have before, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And then wrap yourself up in the weighted blanket.
Obviously.
I love that. I love that.
I need one of those. I wish they were a little cheaper.
Oh, I found a nice one. I'll tell you where it was from after this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so my final takeaway, I guess, kind of connects to the one you just said. In the sense where when she said anxiety is a job, right? So stuck out to me. Like that, I was like, yeah, it is, right? And then like when you think of it that way, it's like, all right, we got to go to a job, 9 to 5, whatever it is, right? And we have to show up for it, you know, like we have to be there. And sometimes, you know, a day at work, I'm thinking of like teaching in school. Sometimes it's just total chaos. And the only thing you can do is like take a breath. Right. And then sometimes things go super, super well. And you can like be grateful that it was a smooth day. And so just the way that she said anxiety is a job, it just made me really think about it in the day to day and how it is like showing up to work. And yeah, you have an idea of what to expect from work, but also, especially as teachers, like you have no idea what to expect, right?
Yes.
And anxiety is kind of like mixes in that, right? And so I just really appreciated the analogy, the metaphor, right? The statement, because it allowed me to see anxiety in another way through another lens that like I very much appreciate. It's a job. I'm showing up for it. I don't know what to expect from it. But also I know that just like I go to work and I can handle it, I can handle anxiety too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I had, when I was a camp director, my former assistant director used to always say, I can do anything for 6 weeks. Like that, and that for some reason, and we haven't worked together in so many years, but she's still a friend. But that sentence sticks out in my mind sometimes when I'm having a hard day. I'm like, Margot, you can do anything for 30 minutes. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Like just as a quick fun aside, I taught a library class today and it was a total shit show.
Yeah. Yeah.
The kids were off the wall. We were joking before we hit record about like, just what it's like to work with kids, right? The nuances and how sometimes, and you just said it, sometimes the day is crazy. Sometimes it goes really smooth. You know what to expect, but you don't. I've taught this class a million times and every day is different. Every day is nuanced. And there was a moment where I was just like, I felt my anxiety start to spike. I'm like, I don't have control over this situation. And then it was just like, okay, but I will be fine. I can do anything for 30 minutes. You've got this, right?
Yes.
And changing the narrative, it does make such a huge difference. So that was my fun aside. But anyway, thank you, Romy, so much for being a guest on our show. We really, really love and appreciate you. Warriors, if you'd like to connect with us for any reason, jump on over to Instagram, join our fam at Anxiety Warriors Podcast. Shoot us an email at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com. You can shout out your wins of the week, big or small. Share any topic ideas you have for us, things you'd love to hear us share about on the show. Or if you think you'd be an amazing guest on our show, let us know. Let's get you on the calendar and help you tell your anxiety journey. Please take a moment and smash that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're tuning in right now. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of our episodes are uploaded for you over there. And if you're feeling extra generous around the holidays coming up, jump into our Threadless shop and grab yourself something fun for yourself as a warrior, for the fellow anxiety warriors in your life, to show support for our show and just to look cool and have cool stuff.
Yeah.
Do it.
I mean, who doesn't want to look cool and have cool stuff
and
support a small podcast business? I wouldn't even call us a business, but I wish. And support a small podcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. Support your fellow warriors who is, delivering the messages every week.
Showing up for you. Thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We are so grateful we get to do this with you.
Till next time.